the street warrior, Mr. Travis Croft. How are you, sir?
I am come out to play. Notion. You're all very lucky to have me here this evening. But I live to serve. It's what we
Well,
do here.
you are the talent of the show.
We just give it away. We just give it away
Yep.
week after week. You can bask in the glow that is our combined powers.
Yes.
Of,
Our combined powers of reliable mediocrity.
He's going to say, activate power of waffling.
But we actually have a returning sponsor, Travis. Can you believe it? Me. Yes, this is a fresh run of the Vaughn, a Volition Saga story, will be available on Amazon. It's already available, but for anyone who's been wanting to get a paperback copy, they are actually getting into producing the paperbacks here in Australia. So that means far, far, far less having to pay on postage, and the cost of the book itself will be adjusted accordingly. So this is a great opportunity. It is not live yet. It is going to be live, I think, in 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, but I will keep you posted here. But this is just your early warning that you will be able to get it at a much, much better price on Amazon. Check it out. Vaughn, a Volition Saga story by myself, George Terran. That is our sponsor note. We've done it.
Actually, exciting news if just on a broader self-published author front, right? Like a lot of people who either want to publish book or have published books, and if you can, and it's just because it hasn't been based locally, if it made Amazon a less palatable option for that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially there's a lot of independent writer talent coming through Australia, and it's really hard to get pushed out, especially if you don't have a budget to be able to promote yourself. Amazon is a great platform to do that. And now that they are actually opening up their printing side in the Australia market, that's fantastic for everyone. So you've got the UK, you've got the US, and you've got Australia, and we've got a dog knocking at the door. So we have got the genuine talent of the show coming in.
The real draw is early this week. He must have finished dinner a little early this week. There's the fluff.
There he is.
I don't think Miss Fox is in at the moment, but she would be worshipping the fluff.
He is hashtag genuine fluff.
Genuine fluff. That's it. Yes. Yeah. The one and only, the original fluff. And he's also an emo again tonight. He sort of put that look in his face.
He's just doing it. I don't know why. He has nothing to complain about. He really doesn't. But
you just don't understand me, Dad. You just don't understand me.
I was emo before you, dog.
I would have loved to have seen emo George. That would have been hilarious. Just as an FYI, most emos listen to things like, My Chemical Romance, maybe Green Day, Genesis, not so much.
I never really did the Genesis thing, but I did listen to Nickelback.
Didn't hold like the Genesis walk record of the Melford?
Oh no, we did that through Colchester.
Okay.
We did a sponsored crawl through Long Melford. Me and my friends decided to just randomly walk the entire stretch of High Street in Colchester doing the Genesis walk.
Well, there you go.
We weren't listening to Genesis at the time. We were just walking. So there was no context for anyone. But it's fine.
I'm going to leave that alone. And just going to say that it's a pretty decent show again this week. I think we've got a real treat for listeners, aside from my presence as usual. It's a full show. I think we're going to try and keep it on track, but that's almost certainly not going to happen. We have our weekly chain movie this week, the Oliver Stone, controversial Oliver Stone milestone from the 90s, Natural Born Killers, which is our chain movie following on from last week's Under Siege. Sublime to ridiculous right there. I think we're both going to have a chat about Jupiter's Revenge or whatever it's called.
Jupiter's Legacy.
There we go. That's the Jupiter thing. I noticed made it all the way through Stowaway, the Netflix film. You've seen a bit of it. I also had a chance to watch Minari, the Academy Award nominated film this week, and I think you've got something on as well.
I have, yeah. I watched the Netflix Melissa McCartney Thunder Force, and so if we're depending on how we do for time, we may very well revisit a topic that we have previously talked about. But when is too much for superheroes? Because there's a lot out there, ladies and gentlemen.
It's a lot.
And let's get straight on to it.
It's a bit of a point. I'm cutting him off already because he knows which side his bread's buttered on.
It's true. Keep the talent happy.
Keep the talent happy. I'm going to my trailer. I'm going to call my agent. So Natural Born Killers, I picked this one as a bit of a real experiment because I had seen this at some point in the late 90s. I think might have been for a university. My cinema studies course, I actually saw this originally.
Yeah.
And I was not impressed. My IMDb rating from the late 90s, which is still the same account that I had back then, it is a 1. Which we gave it a heads up before we went on the air. I did like this a little bit better than this is not a 1-star movie. No. If you want to talk about 1-star movies on my other podcast, The Throwback, available wherever good podcasts can be attained.
He's such a shill.
We watched a movie, the Care Bear movie from 1985. And that is a 1-star movie.
There are many stars in that movie. I've seen them.
Yes, you know I'm enjoying a film when the sound gets muted after 20 minutes and we decide to do our own commentary and including multiple Jeffrey Epstein jokes. So if you want a bit more of it, you're going to have to tune in and download the next episode of A Throwback, whether that's available. Because
there you go.
We operate. I was going to say, that's a 1-star movie. This is not a 1-star movie.
No.
So what is Natural Born Killers? 2 victims of traumatized childhoods become lovers and psychopathic serial murderers, irresponsibly glorified by the mass media. As I noted earlier, this was directed by the great Oliver Stone. Fascinatingly, it was based on a story written by Quentin Tarantino, one of the strangest combinations in Hollywood history. The screenplay was not written. Tarantino did not get a screenplay credit. There are David Veloz, Richard Witowski, and Oliver Stone have the screenplay credit. And if you listen to Oliver Stone talk about it, they reworked it substantially from the original Tarantino story.
We have the trivia about it is apparently Tarantino really hated it so much for many years, but it was not until he bumped into Johnny Cash, and he mentioned how it was one of his most influential movies that he had watched recently. And I believe it was Paramount that released the movie. They agreed to publish Quentin Tarantino's original script for it so that people could see the difference, because he didn't want to be credited with stuff that he hadn't written. So it's an interesting kind of development, production, release, and post-release story about one of the most controversial movies of all time, apparently.
I am keen to actually get a copy of it. I've been having a look. It's a little hard to get. It's a little expensive. I think you can get it for free online. I think you can find the original screenplay published online.
Probably,
but I would like to own the original screenplay. I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Because there are elements of this that you go, oh, yeah, there's Quentin. But it's buried a little bit. Interestingly, though, I watched a few YouTube videos of interviews. I couldn't find any of Quentin talking about this. But I did find a few of Oliver Stone talking about it. He seemed very sensitive about it. Very sensitive. Like one of the ones I watched, he basically opened up and goes, oh, just so you know, we didn't steal this. We bought this. We bought it. We didn't steal it. And I'm like, who thought you stole it? Surely you would have been sued to hell and back if you'd stolen the guy's script. Like, he was like, oh, you know, when we bought it, we talked to Quentin, and Quentin had shopped it around, and no one was interested, and no one wanted to make it. And then when he came to us and sold it, he said he wasn't making it, and you know, he wasn't going to get made. He wasn't on his to-do list. And you're like, okay. I mean, I assumed as much because that's why he fucking sold it to you, right? Like, I mean, he didn't go and sell the script for fucking Pulp Fiction or anything to anybody else. No. I don't think anybody else would have wanted to make it, probably. But yeah, and it's like, okay, I feel like he's actually very defensive about this film. That was a more recent interview. I don't know, it was the last 10 years or so. And I guess he's just people forget, I think, when this film was made, Quentin was a nobody, really. I mean,
pretty much. I mean,
Dogs had been made.
Yeah. But he was kind more of like a kind of a script doctor. He was coming in and putting some spit polish on some bits and pieces, and yeah, it was.
I think True Romance might have been out by this point in time.
Maybe, yeah.
But he certainly was. I mean, and probably in indie cool circles, people might have known who Quentin was from Reservoir Dogs. But he certainly wasn't He wasn't Academy Award nominated. He got his Academy Award, of course, for Best Original Screenplay for Pulp Fiction. By the way, if you hadn't picked it all and you're not a regular viewer or listener, Tarantino fanboy hat is on throughout the review. But he just wasn't the star he was, and I think it's interesting. The star he is, I should say. So I guess maybe at the time it seemed like a fairly nothing decision for Oliver Stone to buy a story by, a Shane Black type character.
Yeah.
As opposed to a Martin Scorsese kind of level character person. And now, of course, the roles are probably reversed. Tarantino is, I would say, significantly more famous than Oliver Stone, and probably in many ways, depending on where you draw the line, significantly more successful. So, and his fanboys do get a little bit, so maybe that's why Oliver's a bit sensitive about the fact that he bought the script, and that said, I would look forward to reading it at some point. What a film! Wouldn't it be interesting to see Quentin get a chance to come back and do his version or his version of True Ran? Maybe it'd be like an animated version or something. I'm sure he won't do it. I'm sure he's not interested in that, but I would just be fascinated to see what he would have done with it.
Because the nature and the parody element and the mania behind the media and how they spin the Mallory and Mickey saga, that very easily translates to modern day sensibilities, particularly with all of the Twitters and the Facebooks and the Instagrams and all of that stuff. I feel like this is a movie that you could very easily just update to present day, and it would potentially be even more poignant considering how politicians and not just these kind of fringe individuals are weaponizing the media and the social media networks and things like that. You could really do something very, very interesting with it. I feel true. Yeah.
I think that is I feel like, though, that's the Stone influence in this film. I feel so. We should probably get a little bit more context of this film. We got distracted here. That never happens.
Shiny thing.
Squirrel. The stars of our film are the characters of Mickey and Mallory Knox, the titular natural born killers. They are played by Woody Harrelson, who plays Mickey, funnily enough, and Juliette Lewis playing Mallory. The cast also includes Tom Sizemore, Rodney Dangerfield, Jared Harris, Robert Downey Jr. as Wayne Gale. I think is a highlight. He plays an Australian tabloid reporter, and you might notice the odd familiar face. Tommy Lee Jones, sorry, who was that linked to last week? Plays the prison warden. But basically, the film is it's a combination road movie and message movie. I think. Yeah. Now the road movie screams Tarantino, like it screeches it from the top of its lungs. So the opening scene at the diner, where his opening scene, we meet Mickey and Mallory. They are in his diner, and a couple of redneck guys come in. So one of them starts to basically sexually harass Juliette Lewis. She kicks the shit out of him. Mickey murders, arrests pretty much everybody else in the diner in an incredibly violent scene. But of course, they leave one person alive, because they always leave one person alive to tell their story, basically to be their conduit into the medium. But that scene reeks of a mashup of the pumpkin honey bunny scene in Pulp Fiction and the opening scene from Dusk Till Dawn.
I was just going to say, I literally just wrote down From Dusk Till Dawn there.
Oh.
It really is. And the nature of From Dusk Till Dawn, how the opening of it and the road trip element and the kind of the slow boil introduction of these characters and the psychoses behind them, it really does feel like that. And then the shift going into a horror comedy action movie of Dusk Till Dawn, that's when you get that shift change in this movie of it becomes a satirical parody about society. It's like, okay, this has happened before.
I almost expected to see that character again, the cowboy policeman from
Michael Parks' character.
Michael Parks, of course, he was the same character in
Kill Bill.
Kill Bill. To see him walk in into the diner there, because it's so reminiscent of that. But then, as you say, like it takes off into a different direction. And interestingly, this doesn't look like a typical Oliver Stone film. Looks like we've done an Oliver Stone film only a few months ago. We did W. Very, very different type of Stone film, one of his political biopics. But even if you look at something like, I don't know, Platoon, Born on the 4th of July,
he has got much more of a kind of genuine or realistic kind of style to his filmography. This is so 90s.
It's incredibly stylized.
It's got like 3,000 cuts in this movie.
It's like watching. I vaguely remember what watching MTV was like in the 90s. You know, with like jump cuts and like filters and going black or white randomly for no reason, and and like weird angles. You know, there used to be a TV show here in Australia on Saturday mornings called Recovery. I don't know if any of our watchers remember it, or any of our people listening. If you're an Australian, if you're not old as me, you might remember Recovery. And it used to do all that kind of wacky shit. It was like MTV, like without the budget. And so they're like random close-ups of a host, like, we'll lift the camera up really high and look down at him from a really weird angle. And this film, I mean, I imagine it's a little bit more deliberate in this instance. I mean, for example, the color, the green filter over the screen, the green filter scenes are tended to indicate these are happening within Mickey's sick world, or he's the product of his sickness. And it has a really weird animated segments as well. It's
almost like a prototype section for Kill Bill 1 with Oren Ishii. And it's like, okay, that's cool animation, but it's weird. This is kind of forcing you down a tunnel to get into the characters' minds and the viewpoints and their kind of scatological thinking pattern. And it's like, oh, okay, this is so fucking much to take on right now. If I had kind of like an epileptic fit or something like that, it would be dangerous.
Sensory overload a little bit, isn't it? And then there's these weird esoteric sequences, like the sequence of a Native American, which is like, is this real? Is this a fever dream? Like,
so like, welcome to the log cabin.
It really was. It was very Twin Peaks.
I
don't expect the log lady to be outside. See you in 20 years. But I guess the point of this story here is trying to make, we're sort of jumping around a little bit. The style of the film is all over the shop. It's like, if you think if you've not seen this and you think you know Oliver Stone, this is very, very, very different to anything I think I've seen him do any of his other films from a stylistic perspective. It's very different to a Tarantino style film as well. There was no Tarantino style really at this point in time.
Not at that point. No.
You can't really put it down to that, other than to say that it just seems like his stories seem to have a really meet a heavily stylized way of filming. So anyway, we meet Mickey and Mallory. We take through flashbacks. We learn about their childhoods to a degree. Probably learn a little bit more about Juliette Lewis's childhood. A little bit more time is spent on that. We learn about her abusive father, who is played by Rodney Dangerfield, and in a very interesting stylistic choice. Those flashbacks are filmed as if they're a 50s.
It's like WandaVision.
Really, really fucked up. WandaVision's fucked up.
Yeah,
this is next level. And Rodney Dangerfield, actually, he's very good in this for someone who is not an actor. He plays a truly repulsive, abusive father. What did you make of those sequences? Did you find them just out of place, or did you think that the sitcom setting made them more disturbing?
I didn't really have a problem with I don't feel like the sitcom sequence made it more disturbing for me. It was just the presence, and it was all down to Rodney in those scenes. He was just his eyes, the way he looked and dressed, and you could almost feel this stench coming off of him, just the way that he's standing there, really pushing his belly out more than he needed to, and really pushing those very, very big eyes that he's got. And it was just disgusting. And apparently he was just told, be your imagination version of the Father from Hell. And he did that, and he really fucking did that. It was disturbing. It also kind of felt weird knowing that Woody Harrelson had been in Cheers. So him coming up onto the set, so to speak, was like, okay, is this a nod to that? Because that's kind of, it kind of feels like you're going for that. It was very disjointed. Like the whole movie is disjointed, but this sitcom of the life of Mallory Knox was just like, okay, yeah, there's a lot of reasons why someone would be fucked up, but at the same time, they're not doing anything to try and make you empathize, really.
But not, I mean, I have to imagine that's a deliberate choice. These people are completely without any redeeming characteristics, I would think. I mean, through these vignettes and his sitcom angle, we do see how she meets Woody, Mickey. And you're right. And what an interesting choice it was for Woody at the time. Great way to really shed your soft, unthreatening, sitcom skin. You see it with artists, right? You see it with like Miley Cyrus, right? Where after she finished doing whatever that TV was, Lizzie McGuire. I don't know what show she was on.
No, she did Hannah
Montana. So then she did the sexy dance at the Grammys that year in the twerking thing, as to try and kick that tweener, I make music for 11-year-olds angle. It didn't really work, but it's an interesting, to see Woody really branch out like this, and it was probably, I'd have to say, pretty successful. If you look at what the rest of the 90s for him were pretty good. If you move on with films like The People versus Larry Flint later on, and he did have a bit of a down period there for a long time, but
I don't think he's ever really given too much of a bad performance. I think he's always chosen interesting, unique performances and roles and things like that. But he is kind of an icon of Hollywood at this point. People like seeing Woody Allen. Not Woody Allen. Woody Harrelson.
No one likes seeing Woody Allen.
No one likes seeing Woody Allen. But Woody Harrelson, I mean, even the image of him just with the shaved head and those sort of like very kind of 70s style glasses and the one earring, it's kind of iconic. This was really his staple, and he's just always pushed. He's almost, I would kind of put him as like a slightly more palatable and overall more successful version of what Nicolas Cage does with his roles. He just pushes those extremes and goes, okay, how far can this character go? And Nick Cage happily just jumps right over the line and keeps on going, whereas Woody Harrelson dances on that line of, okay, he's like the character of Mickey in this. He talks eloquently, and he has got this kind of bizarre sense of code that you believe because of the way Woody portrays him. Otherwise, it would be a very kind of jarring role in someone who isn't quite as talented, I think.
I could see but have you heard about Rampart, though? Rampart is no, you didn't get that guy. Okay. He was in a film called Rampart, and he got asked to do an AMA for it as to promote the film, and has been now widely considered the worst AMA of all time, in the sense that he would not answer any questions that weren't to do with Rampart, or but it didn't allow him to then refer back to Rampart. So it's a bit of a meme now that when you talk about Woody Harrelson, especially on Reddit, they'll be like, but Rampart, have you seen Rampart? Let's talk about Rampart. Yes, it was a pretty. But anyway, you're right. Nicolas Cage could have done this. I think, at least, especially 1994. Nicolas Cage. I think that was right about the time of his Oscar. I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Sure.
But as it was, you got that. You're right. We get that iconic image, and it was on posters everywhere. It was on door. In America, if it was in America, I might say it ended up on dorm walls everywhere.
T-shirts, everything.
We sort of follow Mickey and Mallory's journey to superstardom, and their journey to becoming superstars is by going on a kill crazy rampage, Uma Thurman might say in Kill Bill, and they kill dozens of people, and they become huge stars in their own right, just for being killers. Eventually, they are captured. And there's a famous scene, actually, when they're being led into court. They're being mobbed by fans. Someone asks, what do you have to say to your fans? And Woody Harrelson smirks at the camera and says, you ain't seen nothing yet. Which I think was in the trailer. And that's a really, it's an iconic scene and a wonderful line. Yeah. And then we sort of, I guess the second act, the second half of the film anyway, takes place in the prison, with them now incarcerated, and what happens next? I mean, their agenda of being very famous runs headlong into Robert Downey Jr.'s Wayne Gale, who is based on a real person, by the way.
Yeah, some Australian kind of trash media kind of guy or something.
Yeah, you're probably a bit young to forgive, but there was an Australian guy used to do. There used to be an Australian, an American TV show called Hard Copy.
Oh yeah,
and he was based on an Australian television shock king, Steve Dunleavy. Was a real person who his name doesn't ring a bell to me now, but he was. Yeah, very well known at the time for being a trashy, schlocky TV host. But there was a TV show called Hard Copy, which I'm pretty sure had an Australian or British connection as well. Classic Murdoch. Do you ever remember the Simpsons episode where Homer gets busted for the gummy Venus de Milo? And it's like, and it's Rowdy Roddy Peeper.
Yeah, it's exactly that.
That was what Hard Copy was like. It was ultra trash. You raised an interesting point earlier on that this is almost this critique of the media is kind of prescient, considering what's happened to it in more recent times, where you have stuff like Fox News, which is basically pure fiction. Fox News now seems moderate compared to some of the other real right-wing whack jobs in the States, like Newsmax or OAN. And you go, oh, well, at least Fox kind of acknowledged the fact that Trump lost the election. The other two didn't.
We are living two timelines at once, ladies and gentlemen.
But what I think is interesting, and where I think what became obvious to me for watching someone like Robert Downey Jr.'s character is that this was almost the birth of that kind of trash TV was in the early 90s. And with journalists like Wayne Gale or Steve Dunleavy, the real person he's sort of based the character on, it's fairly crude in the sense of like we're glorifying mass murderers for ratings. So that's a fairly crude, obvious what you're doing as the media, right? I don't think anybody, if we lived in that world, I don't think anybody was questioning why Gale was doing it. I think at one point they might go, you're doing this for ratings. I think Mickey says to him. Where it's become far more insidious now. Like I don't think anybody would have, like I said, you would never have any doubts about what Wayne Gale was doing. I don't think Wayne Gale would have any backwards about coming forward to admit why he was doing it. But now I think it's a far more sinister and insidious undermining of I guess the once noble idea of what the media could be. And whereas someone on Newsmax will say with a straight face, "Oh yeah, Hugo Chavez hacked America's voting machines and installed Biden, despite the fact that Chavez has been dead for 10 years."
You can't prove that.
Yeah, that's just exactly what they want you to believe. But they'll sell that to you as patriotism. So the packaging is a little different. Sorry, that's probably off topic here, but that was one thing that was running through my head, and it's like I was very nostalgic, going, "Oh, that's cute. I remember when trashy fake news was packaged like that." And you would probably be packaged in with like the Mallory and Mickey and Mallory would probably be packaged with a story about UFOs and Bigfoot.
It would be that channel that sort of like not every household was able to get, but you could potentially just jimmy it in. It was almost like pirate TV, and like there was. I don't know if you guys had it here. I feel like you must have had it. It was like after the watershed time, like 6:30, 7 p.m. It was kind of no holds barred, and just it was a wild west of like, wow, okay, yep. So they're showing basically pornography. Oh, they're showing a lot of violence now. Oh, what? They're just throwing anything at the wall and seeing what sticks.
The only thing that might remotely resemble that was SBS. Which was sort of a foreign, was far more about foreign movies back in the day when I was a kid than it was today. It was set up for non-English speaking Australians, and so if you tune in at 11 o'clock on a Friday night, you might end up seeing a very highly sexualized Spanish movie and go, "I have no idea what's going on, but I like it."
Look, the plot of Emmanuel in Space is fantastic.
I haven't seen that one, but there was one every week. But there was certainly no Wild West telly here. You about the closest you got to that was either SBS or tuning in at 4 a.m. and getting Benny Hinn, or an infomercial selling something, and you go, "Yeah, I don't have any knives that can cut me out of a shoe." I did do that once when I was drunk. They were good knives. But anyway, so that's. But I find the second half of the film is where we have Robert Downey Jr. desperately trying to organize the interview with Mickey and Mallory, while they are sort of pursuing their own goals, and they're trying to use each other to get to their end goal. And I guess it's a 27-year-old film. I can spoil it. Mickey and Mallory do far better out of it than when Wayne Gale does when a prison riot breaks out, which Mickey and Mallory use to take advantage of a situation, kill their guards, take him hostage, and escape from prison. What did you make of the finale? The finale is quite an interesting one. I feel like Oliver Stone feels like he's saying something very deep here.
I feel like the second half of this movie is we've had a lot of sensory overload in the first half with kind of pseudo drug trips, like when they get bitten by the snakes and they're tripping out a little bit, and Mickey and Mallory's psychoses bleeding in and out, and the animated moments and things like that. But then everything gets turned up to 11 in the second half, except for Mickey and Mallory, who really become much more subdued. They have these like spikes of aggression and things. For example, when Tom Sizemore was in prison, in the cell with Mallory. But otherwise, it's really loud with the media stuff that keeps on getting cut to, or it's really loud in the prison riot itself, or you've got Wayne Gale screaming all the time in Aussie, and you've got Tommy Lee Jones just overacting as like
chewing the scenery.
Yeah, my God, there's so much just acting froth, just throwing all over the screen between the two of them.
I think we said he was chewing scenery last week in Under Siege, and he sort of looked at us a la Mickey and said, "You ain't seen nothing yet."
Yeah, it's true. It's true though, and I kind of get the point of all of it, why it was directed and edited and created that way, because Oliver Stone was very clearly trying to make this point of there was a shift in society where the people making all the noise and becoming famous, they can just sit back and reap the rewards of the mania that they have wrought. But I don't think that he lands the message well. I think it ends up kind of coming off as like, oh, okay, that's how you're ending it. I don't know. I felt let down.
I tend to agree. I think he's made a good effort at making a message film about the excesses of the media in the early 90s, and he has been borne out by what we've seen happen to the media over the preceding 2.5 decades. Like you said, like we sort of spent some time on it. It doesn't seem its message doesn't seem out of place in 2021. Its style most certainly seems out of place and kind of insane. But you're right. It's kind of one note all the way through. It's kind of banging on that about that point. And what I think he forgets to do in here is create a story of note and a character or characters we like. No one is likable in this movie. Everyone is repulsive. Everyone in this film is utterly repulsive. No one has any, we obviously Mickey and Mallory, horrible, psychotic, cruel killers. Tom Sizemore Skagnetic is a rapist and a killer, and just a disgusting human being into himself. Tommy Lee Jones is
plotting
cruel,
to have Mickey and Mallory killed.
I mean, he's completely without redemption as well. Wayne Gale is cheating on his wife. He has absolutely no moral code. Will do anything for ratings, and in the end, he's more than happy to throw his lot in with the killers. And I think obviously we've talked about Rodney Dangerfield, and he's horrible, beyond horrible as well. There is no one in this film who we spend any time with who we like, and I have to imagine that's a deliberate choice. Stone's a talented writer and director; he knows what he's doing. But I don't think I want to spend 2 hours with people who are all horrible.
Yeah. And it's like you look at this, the end of every character's journey, and every one of them kind of gets the ending that they deserve, except Mickey and Mallory, who get the ending they want. And it's like, okay, so are we now supposed to celebrate them? And are we supposed to have built up a bond with them where it's like, yeah, that's the ending I wanted for them? Is that what he's trying to say? It doesn't match the screamed at message of everyone's fucking horrible and the world's gone to shit because of media. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
It doesn't. If we're supposed to, maybe if he's trying to say something like, "Well, they're the only two people who are living authentically according to what they want to do." I guess I don't know. I guess it didn't really bother me that much that they got away at the end. I guess it just kind of bothered me all the way through that no one in this film is fun to be around there. And I kind of feel like, I think I said this about Promising Young Woman, but I kind of felt like I walked out of this and turned the TV off, needed a shower. These people are horrible. It's a horrible space to be in. And I imagine Oliver Stone wants us to be uncomfortable while we're watching this. He's not telling us this isn't the Care Bear movie. But there's a crossover that's asking to happen. But yeah, it's not a heartwarming family movie. We shouldn't be comfortable at the same time. Maybe something redeeming at the end. I mean, if you're going to have all horrible, unlikable characters, the story needs to be better than this. Not all over the shop like it is. It's not. I would say this is a solid 5 or a 6 now out of 10 for me. I still think the matchup of a Tarantino story with a message film, I don't know that really works. Yeah,
I just think that, especially given the career that Tarantino has made and how very purposeful he has been about any kind of message that he does use or utilize in his narrative storytelling, it's very, very subtle but done to entertain. That's always the goal. It's to entertain. It's never to inform or to make you stop and think and consider. Not in a way that Oliver Stone does, where he, particularly with his kind of socio-political focusings on like Nixon and W and things like that, where he's trying to force you to really look at this particular area and analyze it and question it and debate it and think. I just don't think that's not the kind of cinema that Tarantino wants to make.
And I just and this is not a criticism of thought pieces or message. I love that kind of thing. I love nonfiction. I just think if he was, I just think I can see that the building blocks, or what would have been a very probably proto Kill Billy, Dust of Dawn. Dust of Dawn. So I get the words out. Dust of Dawn kind of story. A typical Tarantino-esque, schlocky exploitation road movie.
Yeah,
I can see the building blocks in there. I mean, and I would love to see. I'm really actually kind of found myself going, oh, I would have loved to have seen how. I don't know if I assume Mickey and Mallory existed in his story. I would love to see what Mickey and Mallory look and sound like with his words, and his direction, because they feel very Tarantino-esque characters to me. But I mean, it just when you transplant them into this film with a decent message and a very talented director and writer, and it just doesn't quite click.
It doesn't work. Yeah.
And I've always said it, and I'm glad I watched it again to say it still doesn't work 100% for me, but it is not a complete shit show. It's not a complete disaster. It's not unwatchable. It is fascinating to look back at this and realize exactly how controversial it was at the time. You can read about it in the IMDb trivia, but the filmmakers were sued by parents of a teenager and John Grisham, the writer, who was involved in this little suit for inspiring these kids to kill themselves or commit murder or basically commit a crime. And for a moment in time, it looked like it might have actually somehow been, here we go, in the infamous incident after the film being released, Oliver Stone and Time Warner was sued by Patsy Byers with the support of author and producer John Grisham. In March 1995, 18-year-old Sarah Edmondson and her boyfriend allegedly dropped acid, watched this movie. Later that night, Sarah shot and paralyzed Byers, a store clerk in somewhere, and Benjamin killed cotton gin manager William Savage in Hernando, Mississippi. So there's a whole other bit of it. I'm not going to go into all of it, but basically, for a point in time, it looked like they might actually be at some level held liable or made responsible in some way for the actions of these teenagers after watching the film.
That would have been a weird chain of events following if that had gone through. Jeez.
Well, if you think about it, it would have been a real landmark decision in terms of, let's think for American for a second here, the First Amendment things. Like if you make a violent film and someone watches your film and does something, and someone's able to prove a linkage of some description, and you can be made, that would have very much influenced the type of cinema that was made from there on. I can't imagine how this thing could have stood. My very, me and U.S. constitutional law. It's just
what's the 13th remark in the Constitution, Travis? That's the one.
420 every day.
I think I know many people who would approve.
You obviously haven't read it. The 420th Amendment is it's a work of art. But yeah, like I can't imagine it would have been able to stand. But gosh, it would have had a chilling effect on what you could write and say and do in popular culture as a result. Yeah. But people, I don't think we remember how controversial this was at the time. This was a big deal about how violent this film was. And I don't know, what do you think it's still really violent? I thought it was like, it's kind of violent, but it's not really that bad.
It is violent, and the characters are grotesque to the point of vulgarity. But at the same time, I think the fact that it very much looks very dated, very 90s, it feels, certainly to me, like there's it has now kind of gone to a point where if this was somehow under the Disney banner, this would have a big black screen come up before it. So like, this movie was made in a time when this was considered acceptable for movie theaters, blah blah blah. And just put some kind of proviso on there, just like, yes, this is how things were. We don't do this anymore. It just, I don't know if it's just a matter of time and cinema has desensitized me to it, but it's like, it's not that bad.
Well, if you think this is the same year that Pulp Fiction came out, just to compare apples to apples, and we saw Marvin being shot in the head in the back of a car by John Travolta, and that was kind of played for laughs.
Yeah. Oh shit, man! Shot him in the face.
Shot Marvin in the face. You know, it's like, yeah. Anyway, and then you're having them hosed down in the backyard. I mean, that film is not backwards about its violence, and I feel like, I mean, again, Tarantino was very controversial at the time with his use of violence and the how gruesome it was. So yeah. I don't know. I found myself thinking, this is pretty mild by today's standards. I mean,
there's a lot of hyperbole around the natural born killers, and around a lot of the ultra violent things. Like, you go back and you watch something like Caligula, another one of the most controversial movies of all time. It's like, actually, it's not that bad. It's a shit movie, yes, and it's showing generally unpleasant things, but at the same time, I've seen far worse. Like, you look at some of the shit that back in the 2010s, when there was that slew of
horror porn,
like
the Eli Roth films.
Yeah, that was far more and still is far more uncomfortable for me to watch on a visceral level than going back and watching these movies.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and you see it all these years later, and it kind of like all the fuss about Mortal Kombat, the video game. Oh no, it's going to ruin the children's lives and blah blah blah. And you're like, well,
you go back and look at it. So like, oh, look at the red pixels that I can't actually. They're supposed to be blood, but yeah, no.
Yeah, you can use your imagination.
Yeah.
Anyway, you have the keys, sir.
I do, and I chose straight away because we don't often do comedies in our channel.
No,
they don't come up.
They don't come up. It's a very subjective comedy.
Yeah, but Woody Harrelson has an uncredited role in a Steve Martin movie that I have not watched. So this is a great opportunity for me to watch one that I've not watched. And this is the generally quite highly praised LA Story.
Oh, I have seen LA Story many, many times. I don't know why it's so highly praised, but there are parts of this movie I love very, very much.
But for those who don't know, the quick little synopsis for you all is, with the help of a talking freeway billboard, a wacky weatherman tries to win the heart of an English newspaper reporter who is struggling to make sense of the strange world of early 1990s Los Angeles. So, as I say, this is written and stars Steve Martin, directed by Mick Jackson, who probably most famous for
The Bodyguard,
The Bodyguard and Volcano.
Starring the wonderful, I think, friend of his show, one of our favorite actors, right behind Sam Rockwell, is Richard Grant.
Oh yeah,
You threatened me with a dead fish.
It also has Sarah Jessica Parker in a role that she has apparently said was a big turning point for her in her career. You've got Kevin Pollak in there, Patrick Stewart. So Iman, who is famously David Bowie's wife. Larry Miller, who is a face that you would just go, oh yeah, him, because he's been in fucking everything. Let me see, who else have we got in here? I think that's the most. Yeah, that's all the most prevalent names. So there's likely to be a couple of options for you to branch off of here. But I'm excited to see this because I do love Steve Martin.
And I should note, everybody, if you're sitting here going, Steve Martin, that is an appropriate response. But this is good Steve Martin. This is on the cusp of not quite so good Steve Martin anymore. This is still.
Yeah, he has had a dark period.
He's not exactly purple patch Steve Martin, but it's It's leaving the purple patch is on behind him, and the dark zone is ahead of him, but it's still pretty good.
Yeah.
Oh my god!
What?
Kevin Pollak.
Yeah.
Is credited with voices in Ewoks Battle for Endor.
Oh, please. Oh my goodness, is that where we're going to go next?
Wouldn't you like to know? I believe it's on Disney Plus now. So
I thought you were just going Kevin Pollak. Ah, okay. So that gets us to Usual Suspects, a now very controversial movie considering the director and main star.
Yeah, no, I mean, does it get more controversial than Ewoks Battle for Endor? I don't know if it does. I don't know if
Star
it
Wars
does.
Christmas Vacation.
Oh, very special.
Yeah.
Which I believe is also on Disney Plus now.
I believe so, yeah. Poor George Lucas, he must be rolling in his bed of money.
Yes, I'm sure. Because where does he sleep? On silk sheets with many beautiful women.
Let's go on. Let's move on, shall we?
Mm-hmm.
Let's go on to Jupiter's Legacy, the new superhero series on Netflix, brought to us by Mark Miller, the creative mind behind Kick-Ass, the comic books there. Jupiter Legacy is also a comic book series, a well-praised comic book series, and it's certainly, I think it's been the most successful writing credit that Mark Miller has received. He is credited for many different variations of like Superman and Batman things that he's done. So this is his kind of analytical breakdown of the golden age and juxtaposing that with the modern age of superheroes all in one show, plus his love of the ancient world and just general kind of cosmological mumbo jumbo. This is an interesting show. It's not a good show.
No, you said you've watched all but 2, I think.
No, I've watched all of it.
All of it, okay.
Yeah.
I watched the first episode, and then about, let's say, half to 2/3 of a second episode before I went, my God, I'm bored. I was so bored. And I found myself going, last week we were watching Invincible. Now that was a good superhero show about a bunch of superheroes I'd never heard of. But I was thoroughly engaged and entertained in that show, which, yeah, we ain't going to jerk off about that show anymore. We've done that. But this is like, what? Something please happen. It's so boring. Now, it's awful. The first 2 episodes at least are awful.
Yeah, it does get better, but it has the cardinal sin that so many shows and movies that are determined to be a trilogy or a saga do. They try and do too much at the fucking start. If there's like the most interesting part of the entire series is everything set in the 1920s. The look, the attitude, the way that they basically go to Skull Island. It's not actually Skull Island, like you don't see King Kong or anything like that, but it's like this mythological island that is legendary and things like that. It really, the way that they looked as this party adventuring and eventually getting powers of superheroes, which is never explained, nor is the title of the series. It's like Jupiter's. No, there's no superheroes called Jupiter.
No one did it called Jupiter.
No one. Do they go to Jupiter? Not really explained. But the 1920 stuff looks really cool, and it's like I would love a show like The Mummy, Brendan Fraser era. Like set it in the 1920s, show like that. That would be fucking cool. And fuck it, if you really want to do superheroes, do a 1920s set superhero show. That would look fucking cool. It would be interesting. It's a period of time that we do not see on TV. We get little bits of it here and there in cinema, but it's not really a big show period. But it's got a wonderful style.
I think I said to you before, like I got two-thirds away through the second episode and then found something more interesting to watch when a fly was walking across the wall on the other side of a room. That's about how bored I was. I guess another criticism I have here is it looks cheap.
Yeah.
It looks really cheap. Now, I understand superheroes are not cheap to produce. You want to make them look good. There's a reason why I got what an Endgame cost, what, $200-300 million or something like that to make.
Yeah.
A lot of shows these days cost, I think Star Trek Discovery costs, something like $10 million an episode to make or something crazy like that.
25, 30. Yeah.
And I do not like that show at all, but it looks good.
Yeah.
One thing you cannot criticize that show for is looking cheap. Yeah. But this show reminded me a lot of those CW superhero shows like The Flash and Stargirl and Batwoman and
absolutely
that kind of thing.
Agree. There's this level of finish to the costumes, and like the superheroes, they never get dirty. Their costumes don't look lived in. They don't look lived in. They look too much like a model. It's like, well, no. I'm sorry, that unlike Superman's cape and costume, it comes from Krypton. So you could argue, all right, that's one of the reasons why it doesn't rip and things like that, because it's made of a material that is more powerful because of just where it's come from another planet. It's different technology. But this is all stuff that we still don't know where they come from, because when they get their powers, they get their costumes, and it kind of works in Shazam because it's literally magic. They are wearing magic. Green Lantern, it's literally a costume he makes with his mind, so he doesn't have to make it look dirty if he doesn't want to. But these people are having fight. Like the first episode is this fight with like Black Star, this kind of doomsday slash.
It's a dollar store orc from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, and he's just wrecking them. But the fight sequence is lazy. It's poorly done. There's overuse of wire work to make it look like they're flying. None of the flying and things looks believable. And they're being thrown around. It's like, okay, oh, look at that. That guy's hair got a little messed up. It just doesn't work. And they keep trying to do all these like red herrings and lead you off and think, oh, is the bad guy over here? Is the bad guy this? What's this going to happen? And they end up not actually fulfilling any storylines. They all become unfulfilled and unsatisfying.
I agree. And just comparing it again to Insidious. Sorry, Invincible. Very different. But if you think about that fight scene between Mark and his dad in the final, if starters, they deal with the costumes, right?
Yeah.
And that first couple of episodes, Mark Hamill's character is just there to be the costume maker in there.
Yeah.
And they've got a cool character and a cool scene, and he serves some purpose in the story later on.
Yeah.
And you get the greatest voice actor of all time to do it. And there you go. We know what happens with costumes. We know why they're so hardy.
Yeah.
But even then, in the final couple episodes, when Mark takes on his dad, his costume gets fucked up. Yeah. Even in the first episode where Omni-Man destroys the Guardians, his costume gets all fucked up.
Yeah.
And I guess I know it's animation and it's a little bit easier, but obviously Kirkman and the guys thought about it. Like just little things like when Mark eye gouges Omni-Man, his dad, his eyes are bloodshot for the next episode as well.
Yeah.
Little things like that where attention to detail, which sort of takes it from it's a cool fight sequence, kind of cool, I guess, to I'm buying into this as being something that the filmmakers or the creators care about. This show has either through incompetence and lazy filmmaking, or I would think far more likely, it just doesn't have the budget it needs to achieve that kind of thing in live action.
Well, you look at the cast, and there's a bunch of people that you go, oh, I've seen them around. There's no big names to this. Like
other than Josh Duhamel.
Yeah, he's the biggest name, but he's not exactly a big name.
He was 10 years ago, maybe he was, when he was in the Transformers movie, right? But that was not 2007.
Yeah. This is supposed to be like the big kind of grand entrance of Mark Millar's superhero takes, which he proselytizes like nobody else. He talks about the Superman movie that he is trilogy that he's always wanted to do, going from the birth of Krypton to the death of Earth, and Superman being the only one. He will go on for days talking about it. It's like, okay, well, put up or shut up. He's done it in the comics of Jupiter's Legacy and the spin-offs, because there's tons of fucking spin-offs, there's prequels, there's all sorts of stuff. This is supposed to be his first, because I believe he's a producer on this as well. He's had a lot of control on this. Netflix bought the rights to this for a lot of fucking money, and this is what they've come up against. And this brings up production issues. Stephen S. DeKnight was he's credited as the creator of the series. He's the guy that brought us the Daredevil series, the now defunct Marvel Netflix show that was arguably the strongest, most potent, depending on who you talk to. Personally, I still think that Jessica Jones season 1 was still the #1 out of all of those. So he knows how to make these gritty, realistic superhero shows with this overarching story, as well as telling interesting individual episodes. He left this over creative differences, and they got someone else in, and clearly they didn't know what to do, because, like I said before, there is no story that has a satisfying ending, and every single character in it's like, I don't think I actually know who the fuck you called. Like, the names of the superhero names. One of them is called Brainwave, but that only makes sense just when you see his powers. But even then, why do all fucking telepaths and psychics have to put their hand out or touch their head to use their power? Why?
I guess it's you've got to demonstrate what they're got to make it look like they're doing something, right?
There is literally we have had cameras literally go in through the eye and go into our bodies. They can't think of something visually interesting that isn't just
I think didn't David Tennant's character not do that again, to go back to Jessica Jones?
He didn't. He just talked, and it worked. You knew exactly what he was fucking doing.
And yet another vote for that, because that was fucking great.
Yeah.
But he was fucking menacing. I think we talked about it before with Thanos. Yeah. He was probably almost their best villain, except for Loki. And he still, and that show may not be canon anymore, but his performance dare not be overlooked, because it was so good. And he was probably the most brilliant telepath character I think I've seen on a superhero show.
He was terrifying. He was commanding. He did everything, and you knew what his power was straight away. But I think Josh Duhamel is, he's just credited as Sheldon Sampson, but he's
a utopian.
Utopian, thank you. Yeah, like, I don't fucking care. And there's just none of the superhero names. It's like, okay, I don't care who you are. I don't really know who you are. I recognize you because I'm literally looking at you, and I've chained through this because I want to get to the end. But otherwise, don't know you from you. It's a miss.
It's a miss, this one for me. It's a miss. I might go back at some point. I can't say I have a great degree of confidence I will. It just coming off Invincible, it felt like a pale imitation of that. And look, obviously, if we've got comic book fanboys who are listening, or the bots happen to have read a couple of comic books at some point in time, have hacked Amazon. They might be coming after, this predates Invincible, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if Thanos is a ripoff of Doomsday. Doesn't matter. Marvel did it first. Marvel did it better. Yeah. And I think in this case,
go on.
No, I was going to say Kirkman and co. did much better with Invincible.
I will say it's not all trash. For example, there is actually, it's not a great scene, but the message behind it is actually quite good. It's a scene between the brothers Sheldon and I can't remember his other name, the guy who plays Brainwave. They are talking about their role in society and in the world as superheroes. They're kind of arguing, why don't they meddle in wars, in politics, and things like that? And it's got some interesting ideas. It is far too lofty of an idea for this show to handle, but it is nice to actually have, for the first time, that come up as like, okay, yeah, these godly fucking powers, people, why aren't they just taking over the world and just setting everything straight and stopping everything that they don't want to stop? Because who can fucking stop them? It's a good conversation piece that any geek who has ever watched any superhero movie, particularly Superman, because he is nigh on invincible the way that the movies portray him now, it's like, why doesn't he just fucking do this? We can't do anything to stop him, so why does he? It's never addressed in their fucking movies, and it is an interesting, compelling piece. That is a compelling question that would actually have, if like Superman, if Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent had the conversation that happens in Jupiter Legacy in Batman v Superman, that would have been cool. They didn't, and they decided to have this weird pissing contest instead in that movie.
Oh, why did you say that name?
But it's an important one that just ends up feeling very shit because it's surrounded by so much waste in this show. It's a real shame.
Hang on a second. Do you want to be famous?
No, I don't want to buy followers and viewers.
I don't want to find followers and things. No, thank you. We're not interested. Down comes the band hammer, and I'm probably gonna boom. And it happens every time when you do this. I lose the chat. So I get a big red thing that pops up. But anyway, doesn't matter. I was going to say the one superhero property I can think of that did that well was with the Watchmen.
Yeah. Even then, it's still not quite right, but it's handled it the best.
I meant more of a book rather than
the book. Yes, absolutely.
But the film kind of touched on it a little bit, but it didn't go too deep into it.
Yeah,
and it kind of feels like what's to be something like The Watchmen.
That's a lot of what I feel is Mark Millar's thing. It's sort of like I just anytime I read his stuff, I look at it and just go, oh, you really want to be Alan Moore, don't you? You want to be like the blockbuster balls to the wall version of Alan Moore. It's like, you're not. You do entertaining stuff. Just do that. Be more like Robert Rodriguez instead of trying to be like Tarantino. Let's put it in movie things where Robert Rodriguez is very good at what he does, but if you try and give him more subtlety, he just can't handle it. He doesn't know how to handle that. Whereas Tarantino uses violence to tell his story in a very delicate, fine way. Nothing wrong with either of those ways, but when one tries to do the other,
you accept your place in the world. You are not Alan Moore.
Yeah, there are very, very few people who are.
And that's okay. Yeah, it's okay. Not, as you say, not many are. You got to accept your place in the world. Jupiter's Legacy. Now you've had some time to watch yet another superhero property on one of these. Is it a Netflix movie?
It is another Netflix movie. Yes.
And do tell us about Thunder Force.
Thunder Force. Yes. This was a challenge because it stars Melissa McCarthy, and I don't like her. I've never found her funny in anything, and that continues in this movie. It's not a funny movie. It's the funniest bit, or the funniest element of it is Jason Bateman's character, the Crab, because he basically plays Jason Bateman, but with crab claws.
And I think there's some Zoidberg influence there.
A little bit, yeah.
I hear he scuttles a little bit.
Yeah, he does. He purposely kind of scuttles off to the side, and it's like, okay, I just really wish that release the whoop, release the whoop. So it's just recut with him. Like,
hooray! I'm having a wonderful time.
I'm useful. Oh, that would be phenomenal.
So,
it would make
but
this
yeah, it's directed by Ben Falcone yet again, who is Melissa McCarthy's husband.
Yep.
And I think has been responsible for some of her absolute worst work.
Tammy,
and I think Identity Thief might have been him as well.
Possibly, yeah.
But if it's bad, and she's into the Super Intelligence, I think he did as well, which I think came out last year, which apparently was awful.
Yeah. But for those who give a shit, the plot is, in a world where supervillains are commonplace, two estranged childhood best friends reunite after one devises a treatment that gives them powers to protect their city. That is the synopsis. That is as much of a plot as they really want. It's like, okay, they don't really explain as to why people can be born with superpowers, and they manifest in strange ways, as we've seen with the crab, just having crab claws. He has no other crab abilities. He just has crab hands. But because of that, he has chosen a life of crime. There are people like this has got Bobby Cannavale in it, Pom Klementif, who is no stranger to superhero movies, considering she plays Mantis in the Guardians of the Galaxy. And she's like shown throwing lightning and fire and all sorts of hellish things around in the beginning. And it's like, okay, so what is it, like a genetic thing where if you get a superpower, you are genetically predispositioned to break rules and become an agent of chaos in our society? Oh, you're not going to answer that question. Okay, cool. And yet, Olivia Spence, who is
Octavia.
Octavia Spence, who's Melissa McCarthy's friend in the show. She is creating something to give people powers, but it doesn't send them evil. They just get power. So like, okay. Yeah, you've got some very interesting rules of a world here. I don't care. And it's sitting on a 34 for Metacritic and 4.4 on the IMDb scale. It doesn't look bad. Like, it doesn't, it has the typical look of a Netflix movie where it's like, okay, these are serviceable special effects and serviceable action sequences, but it feels like this kind of sits very much along the same vein as a lot of the Adam Sandler Netflix comedy movies, where it's like, okay, you're trying to be funny, but you're really not. It doesn't, eye candy wise, it doesn't look too bad. You've got no names in there, so they're going to be a draw for people who are like, oh, I like Jason Bateman, I watched that. But it's like, oh, this is a hollow shell. This is a very, very hollow shell. It also does kind of scream at Netflix's attempt to try and make their own franchise, because the way that the movie ends, it's obvious that they've gone, hey, if you like this, we'll make more of it. We already have lots of ideas that we don't know what to do with. And yeah, that's all I'm going to give this title.
nothing but bad things about this film. And I wonder if the economics of how Netflix works changes the read of what's a good film. What is a successful film for Netflix? I remember Adam Sandler films, and they were roundly criticized and rated as being some of the most god-awful things going around.
Them, so you don't have to.
They were awful even by Sandler standards, according to most people. Yet, I think I remember reading, maybe it was the first one, The Hateful Eight or whatever it was.
That's bad.
Was one of the most highly viewed films in Netflix history.
Mm-hmm.
And this kind of thing happens again and again. Like, these films come out, they're awful, and they turn out. Like, there's a Tish Hemsworth movie that came out last year, but wasn't very good. Spy one. Yeah, and apparently, again, that broke records as being one of their most watched things ever. You don't know really because, I mean, it's Netflix, right? They don't necessarily disclose what they say. Hey, this has been our most highly viewed thing ever. Does it just like because people are lazy at home and go, oh, Melissa McCarthy's in it. I'll watch that.
I think that it is largely a lot of that. I think it's this. Their movies are throw just enough money at this, get just enough star power behind it to get people to go, all right, I'll try Netflix and sign up to Netflix and watch it and then go, oh, you know what? That was all right. Oh, there's some more on there. But then you start looking and you go, oh, look at all these other shows. The TV shows of Netflix have always been where their quality comes from. It's always, even their trashy Netflix TV stuff like the Irregulars, the kind of the show that's already been cancelled after one season, based around the Baker Street Irregulars of Sherlock Holmes. Even that is overall better and better quality and better production value and better writing and everything compared to most of these star-led comedy / science fiction movies that Netflix has definitely chosen as its two temples of cinema genre that it goes for: comedy and sci-fi. And it's like, okay, so these are just literally just gateway drugs to get people into the more content that they produce that's better. Okay. I don't know how long that format is going to last, but that seems to be what they're doing.
And it's interesting. Maybe what's important to them is changing it away. So if lots of people watch a piece of shit Adam Sandler film or Melissa McCarthy film, if 20% of their viewers watch it in the first week, let's say, that seems like a lot. Maybe that's not good anymore, because really where they were 5 years ago is not where they are now in a way. Like, they didn't have anywhere near as much competition. So, is a good film not just one that 20% of your audience watches, or is it a good one, a film that makes you go, or a film series that makes people go, I need to either sign up for Netflix or keep my membership so I can keep watching it. Like, I can't imagine there are many people who sign up for Disney Plus apart from shit like The Mandalorian and the Marvel stuff, right? Like, if it's not Star Wars and Marvel, why? I don't think there's anything else on Disney Plus, is there, apart from their old animated films? Like, I mean, it's their IP is so strong at Disney that they've really, despite the fact that, as far as I can tell, got very minimal new content. What new content they do have is so highly coveted that they sign people up like crazy.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, Disney Plus seems to there seems to be a lot of new content on there for young kids, which is one of the reasons why I think it's been vital for them to do this Disney Plus Star thing for their more mature stuff, and a lot of their, like, the Alien things that they got from Fox. It'll be interesting to see how that side of the Disney Plus streaming develops. Will they start doing more adult, original content, adult stuff over there that is not necessarily Star Wars, Disney, or Marvel branded? Will we get a mini series, the life on LV-426 for Alien or something like that?
Could just, as long as they keep Ridley Scott away from it.
Yeah, I don't know what's happened.
You've had your chance,
him.
Ridley.
I don't know what's happened with him.
And maybe just have a chat to Neil Blomkamp.
Yeah.
Come on back.
Yeah.
Come on back. Bring it back. While we're talking Netflix movies, should we move on to the other Netflix movie you saw a bit of? I saw the whole thing. This is the Netflix movie Stowaway.
Yes.
A 3-person crew on a mission to Mars faces an impossible choice when an unplanned passenger jeopardizes the lives of everyone on board. This is directed by Joe Pena, or Penna. I don't know how you pronounce that. It sounds familiar. I've never seen anything he's ever done. So, yeah, that's got that going for it. He wrote it as well. It stars probably our most notable stars here are Anna Kendrick and the Australian living treasure, Toni Collette, who George can't stand. Seriously, he's a living treasure. How can you not like? She's so good.
She's just everything about her just makes me want to claw my skin off.
She's so good. I mean, she does everything. Like, she did horror, she's done comedy, she's done drama, and she does it all really well.
I don't think she does.
I mean, she's Academy Award nominated, right? She was. I mean, she only ever won, and that's kind of a shame. But she's won. She's been nominated for lots of Golden Globes, Emmys, BAFTAs, actors.
Yes. Get
Astra
off,
Awards.
Get off.
AFIs. Actors. Like, seriously, she's. I don't think you can say she's not a good actress.
You
can say you don't like her work. You can't say she's not. You can't say it's not good. She's not talented.
I don't think she is.
I think they're very different things, right? Like, you can say,
I understand that she is incredibly popular and many people think that she is talented. I just do not see I just don't see it. Her, Melissa McCartney, and Renee Zellweger, the most overrated performers. I have tried repeatedly.
I just don't see how you can say that. You can say you don't enjoy something. But to say, we had this argument once before when you said you didn't think Black Mirror was good. And you said it was objectively bad. But I think you can say, I don't enjoy it. But to say it's objectively bad is kind of ridiculous. But that's another argument. We've had that one. And I think the same thing here. You can say, I don't enjoy her work, which is crazy, but understandable. But at the same time, you say, I don't think, or to say Renee Zellweger is not good because did you see Judy?
I have not seen Judy. I do want to see Judy
because she's amazing in that. But anyway, so living treasure Toni Collette in a role I will pay is an odd one for her. It's a funny little role for her to be in. It doesn't fit like something I would expect to see Toni in. I think she does okay with it. So
I think all of the actors, because Anna Kendrick, Daniel Day Kim, who is. He's a face that a lot of people will probably know. He was from Lost. He was in the very bad Hellboy reimagining from 2 years ago. He was in Insurrection, so he's definitely a face that people would recognize. And the only other actor in this is Shamia Anderson, who I momentarily thought, is that Denzel Washington's son again? No, that's not him. There was the first time you see him when he sort of like falls out of the air duct, it's like, oh shit, okay, is that him? Oh no, it's not him. I don't know.
That's racist. He was in Winona Earp. I think. Did you watch Winona Earp? I thought you might have.
No, Shay has watched Winona Earp, but I have not. But
so as George is giving a bit of a hint here, how far in did you make it?
40 minutes.
Okay, it's not too bad. It is 2 hours, so that's almost halfway. We have live in a universe where missions to Mars are a little bit more run of the mill. We have a fairly regular trip. What do you want to call it? So the schedule of flights to Mars. We have a regular scheduled mission going to Mars with our three main stars, Anna Kendrick, Daniel Day Kim, and Toni Collette. Toni Collette is kind of the pilot, if you will, of the shuttle, for want of a better term, the spaceship, the rocket, what do you call it? Anna Kendrick and Daniel Day Kim are scientists of some description who are accompanying her on the trip to Mars to do science things.
And everything goes according to plan. And that's
they get there, and Matt Damon lives there. They eat some poo potatoes. Yeah, it's just everyone has a good time. A distance of disco music. They take off, and something shortly after they hook up with like a thing, like a mini space station thing in orbit above Earth, which then pushes off towards Mars. And it spins around to give them a false gravity. Shortly, as they're sort of going about their way, doing their thing, Toni Collette's checking a thing, the air duct, as you sort of say, and in checking his air duct, she finds that somehow Jameer Anderson's character, Michael, has inadvertently stowed away on their trip to Mars. He worked on the spaceship somehow. He was like a technician of some description, and somehow got stuck in the ship. And when it was on board when it took off, and he's now on the way to Mars with them.
Nothing suspicious there.
And that was this interesting thing is this film, I would say, this has a fairly poor rating, by the way. It's a 5.6 on IMDb, which I think is undeserved. It's better than that. It has a 63 on Metascore, which is more about where I think it should sit. This thing does tend to subvert your expectations on the regular for me, if you manage to make it all the way through. Put the spoiler warning up, because
all right, it's going up. It's up.
It's up. If you're listening later,
spoilers.
1
hour 27, ladies and gentlemen.
Scoot ahead, or if you're watching and you want to see this, if it sounds like your kind of thing, it is sci-fi. Think Apollo 13. If you liked Apollo 13, you might enjoy this. This is not Apollo 13, by the way. Not in that league. This is like, Mum says we've got Apollo 13 at home. And this is what's in the cupboard, right? This is dollar store Apollo 13.
This is the student version.
Pretty much. It's like, I know a genuine Sawny when I see one. But if you like that, you might enjoy it. So they encounter the problem that obviously you expect they're going to encounter is that he's some sort of saboteur, or something. Michael has some sort of nefarious intent, or he's got some sort of problem that's going to lead him to kill everybody on board, or he's going to open up a portal to hell and take them to a vent
sleeper agent,
or it's going to be like Event Horizon or something. It would be a lot cooler if it was like Event Horizon.
That would be a twist. Although that would probably end up going into what was that fucking Cloverfield Paradox.
No.
Yep. I invoked the name. The third seal is broken.
Be gone, demon. Oh, that film was awful. But it doesn't. So it subverts your expectations that Michael is not a nefarious sleeper. He's not a demon of any kind. He's not an alien in disguise, and he has no nefarious purposes at all. This is more in the vein of, like I said, something more like Apollo 13 or The Martian, where the enemy or the obstacle to overcome is nature or physics itself. In this case, in being inadvertently stowed away, Michael has damaged some sort of air duct ventilation system thing, and that means that they do not have enough oxygen to get them, all four of them, on the way to Mars. And that does actually introduce an interesting element of how do you then decide, if you literally either three of you get there alive or everyone dies. Is a really interesting little angle on a story to take, and you could really have a wonderful discussion of morality around that situation, and how do we deal with it. And the film does that for a little while, but it doesn't really stick to it. We then sort of go through some explorations of ways they can get around it, and it kind of turns into a bit of a space adventure. I don't know how to describe it. It's a bit Martian-y at the end, in the sense of like, we need to do this thing to get the thing to do the other thing, which will help us save us, and then it gets a little bit silly towards the end, where someone has to gloriously sacrifice themselves in order to save everybody and make sure they get to Mars. So I can see maybe that's what the ending is disappointing. And it's sudden, and it's kind of like, I don't know how to end this. Fuck it, everybody's dead. I don't know, like it's just kind of throws the end at the screen. You're like, oh, that's deeply underwhelming.
Yeah.
But in the lead up to that, I found it genuinely, a lot of it very tense, and I found the moral dilemma at the core of a film interesting. I don't think it explored it or approached it anything particularly original or intelligent, but it was interesting to see a film even have a go at it for a little while. I don't think many films do. I think it would be a far easier. I was fully expecting this to be like Sunshine. Remember Sunshine?
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I liked it, and that was, it was Danny Boyle, wasn't it?
Yeah, Danny Boyle and Alex Garland.
Alex Garland. So it's a good, Cillian
combo.
Murphy. No, it had a fairly bit of a supernatural element in there as well. Remember the former captain and stuff. And that's kind of what I was expecting to be done in this film. But when you see Netflix movie and you sort of get those elements in space, and you're thinking, we're going to have a ghost story in space, and it's a Netflix movie, this is going to suck.
Yeah.
But it doesn't do that. As I said, it takes a slightly left, well-traveled path of, as I said, the ship's moving too fast to turn around. There's not enough air for all of them on board. What do you do? And I enjoyed parts of it. A significant chunk of it I enjoyed. There are some scenes where a couple of the characters have to climb out of a spacecraft and into other parts of a spacecraft in ways that they weren't designed to do. That evoke gravity for me. Again, I am comparing to significantly better films, by the way. Not putting it in that category. But there, I don't. Do you see Gravity?
I liked it. I don't think it's Alfonso Cuarón's best work, but it was good.
I know. I think I said this before. But I find the idea of being in space incredibly uncomfortable. Like the idea of, I found just First Man, the Ryan Gosling film, where he's flying. Neil Armstrong's flying into space by himself, and you can see the curvature of the Earth, and you're like, the idea of that is fucking terrifying to me.
That's strangely claustrophobic and so expansive all at once. It was great. Ryan Gosling did it great, and so did Sandra Bullock in Gravity as well. That is one of the problems that I feel with the first 40 minutes of this. I didn't get really a sense of space of where they were. It seemed bigger than what they were, and there was like Michael's character talks. Like there's a moment where Zoe goes, "Oh, I'll never get used to the fact that how close we are to nothing." And he rattles off some science about, oh yeah, when they added a third person, they had to reduce all this and that and that. So I'm like, that's cool. That adds a highlight of just what you literally being here, just your weight, let alone your oxygen and things like that, what kind of toll that would take on the journey itself. But I'm not really seeing it. Like the sets are nice, they're good, but they don't feel like they're as claustrophobic as they kind of should be.
Fairness, that's fair. I don't think it does it as well as again, like something like Apollo 13 did. But it gets better on that front later on, if that's what you're looking for, which wasn't exactly what I was looking for, but like, where they're sort of scaling through space on cables with cable hooks to sort of scaling these cables to get to the big ship that's spinning around to do things with it. They're going to retrieve liquid oxygen from the big tank thing that's spinning around, creating their gravity. And they have to climb this cable with hooks and stuff. And you're like, oh, that is just the worst. I just felt incredibly uncomfortable with the idea of doing that in open space, right? And I thought those scenes were done well. I thought it looked good.
Yeah.
If you don't have a problem with any of the actors, look, I mean, do set your expectations to low. I thought it was a lot better than a 5.6 for me. Not perfect, but better than a 5.6.
I feel like there was kind of purposeful casting, certainly so far with it. Like for me, anytime it's a situation like this, the stowaway and how that affects the fact that they have this grander mission. For me, I always want there to be someone who just go, all right, I'm just going to shoot you, dead, done, problem solved, out the airlock, and move on. But the way that Zoe and David's characters are, as well as certainly in the first 40 minutes that I've watched, Marina, they all seem too level-headed and too pleasant to just be that cold-blooded. So I accepted so far I've accepted the fact that, like, okay, none of them is willing to just pull that thread and just get it done. They're not telling that story. That's okay. I know what my expectation is now and move on. But it was nice, and they're all entertaining. so far, just building the characters up and having them interact with Michael as he's kind of inducted into the group, you see just nice character work, and that's something that I don't think really any of the things that we've talked about so far in the show have had. So it's nice to actually have just a little bit of that on the palette today.
And it's also very easy to say you just shoot someone for about an airlock, but I'm not sure that's true to life. Killing someone you've got to know would be challenging, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to do it, but I'm always in the mindset that if you're sending people off to start building things for the future, it's like, okay, we need to make sure that no one goes crazy. We need to make sure that nothing goes wrong. And these are the hard lines that we have. So like, okay, the priority is that this ship gets to Mars. So we will have to do this. So this has happened. Here's what you do to make sure that you get there, and things like that. And like
killing a stowaway probably wasn't on one of the checklists.
I kind of feel like it's at that point that do you believe it? Do you not? If you are willing to believe and just go with the ride, then fine. If you, I feel like this would kind of fail the pseudo Dell scenario. So like, I don't believe that would happen. I don't believe that someone could do that. So throwing the whole movie out.
I'll pay that, but the Vidal effect went through my head going, I don't know if that's actually possible. Like, weight on spaceships is pretty tightly rationed.
Yeah.
And they even go through that in the film. She brings a mug on to taunt one of her fellow scientists, Anna Kendrick's character does. And he's like, oh, you use 800 grams of your personal allowance for that, blah, blah, blah. Okay, they've got enough of an allowance that he can talk about 800 grams or whatever it was. But, this guy's got to weigh, I don't know, 150, 200 pounds. And they didn't notice.
It's like, sorry, out goes the mug.
It was that part was a little bit like that was a leap.
Yeah. But I'm so far I've been happy to just accept that this happened in order to tell the story. As long as they keep me invested with the rest of the story, then I will forgive that big leap of faith that they're asking you to do with everything that they've set up so far. It's like, okay. All right, let's go. Let's just see. Yeah,
I'm not sure you're going to make it all the way through with your Toni Collette issue. If you have an issue with one of the performances in the film, I can't think of any. I know Shay won't watch Tom Cruise movies, for example. Mm-hmm. Just has a problem with Tom. I can't. I mean, I struggle with Sandler because he's very rarely in anything that's watchable. But I don't think I in fairness, I gave Uncut Gems a chance last year and I hated it.
Yeah.
But I made it all the way through Punch Drunk Love. That's the only one.
Punch Drunk Love's a good movie. It's a very good movie.
But I think he's probably maybe equivalent. Any person I can think of for me is like, if I see he's in it, I mean, and probably now to a degree, Melissa McCarthy. Like, she's done some stuff I didn't hate. Like, I like Spy. But pretty much if I see her name on something now, she does nothing but shit recently. Yeah. I'm going to go, maybe not, right? Give me a good reason to watch.
I'm always willing to give any movie a go. There's no actor in a movie that I would just go, no, I'm not watching it just because of that one actor. If there's something else in the movie that is interesting to me, it's like, okay, you are getting a pass on this one because of this. Here's your chance. You can piggyback on my love for something else. Do it. I always want the best. But so far from Toni Collette's performance, it's like, okay, this is very vanilla. And
you're trying to hurt me. You're going to ask you to stop now. I feel like I don't want to cut you off. You have anything else you would like to talk about this week that I've forgotten about?
I do want to talk about yet another Netflix movie. It's called Love and Monsters, but I will talk about that next week because we are getting along in the tooth, and I want to hear what you think about Minari.
Minari. By the way, we're going to park, as I suspected we would have to, a conversation about when is too much superheroes enough. Because
after we've watched Loki in 2 weeks' time, or
it's not a bad idea. Yeah, Minari is the Academy Award nominated drama starring Stephen Yeun. It did win an Academy Award this year, Best Performance by an Actress in a Supporting Role. It was nominated for 5 other Oscars, which it did not win, including Best Original Screenplay, Best Performance by an Actor, and Best Motion Picture of the Year, and Director. So it got some big nods, and it didn't win. It thoroughly deserves those nominations. Now, the synopsis, according to IMDb, you best strap your ears in because I'm going to take them for the ride of our life, ladies and gentlemen.
This is the longest synopsis that we have ever read out on this show, ladies and gentlemen.
Go get a cup of tea, get comfortable.
Start your timers, ladies and gentlemen. Begin.
A Korean family starts a farm in 1980s Arkansas. Full stop. That is it. Thank you for coming. I'm like, okay. I guess, the usual suspects. A bunch of criminals commit crimes. Cinderella, what's it about?
Happens.
A princess has a big sleep and marries someone. It doesn't. Okay. So a little bit more detail here.
Yes,
you're yearning to own a small patch of land and be more than a chicken sexer. The ambitious paterfamilias. I don't really know what that word is.
Father leader of the family.
Jacob Yee relocates his Korean-American family, skeptical wife Monica, and their children David and Ann from California to 1980s rural Arkansas to start afresh and capture the elusive American dream. It's a long sentence. However, new beginnings are always challenging, and to find out what is best for the family, let alone start a 50-acre farm to grow and sell Korean fruits and vegetables, is easier said than done. But amid sincere promises, cultural needs, fleeting hopes, and the ever-present threat of financial disaster, Jacob is convinced that he has found his own slice of Eden in the rich, dark soil of Arkansas. Can Grandma Sunja's humble but resilient Minari help the Yee family figure out their place in the world? That gives you a better synopsis. So we have Stephen Yeun, who probably everyone's most likely to know from The Walking Dead.
And the voice in Invincible.
Yes. He was in Okja as well, which was a Netflix thing.
That was quite
good. He's probably, I think it's The Walking Dead. Basically played Glenn, didn't he? I think.
Yeah,
and he's probably the only person in this film you're going to know. Whereas Daryl Cox plays Mr. Harlan. Maybe. It's a fairly low profile cast.
Yeah.
As we sort of know, so Stephen Yeun moves his family from California to Arkansas. He sets up in on a 50-acre farm, living in basically, I guess, what the Americans call like a mobile home, like a trailer kind of thing. His wife is super unimpressed about it. She's super, as you sort of noted there, really, really skeptical about the whole kit and caboodle. And they bring their kids along, David and Anne.
Question?
Yes.
What is Minari? Because in the longer one, it's Grandma Suja's humble but resilient Minari. What is?
Yes,
what
and
is...
I was going to get to that.
Sorry.
Because it doesn't make a lot of sense. But as you sort of know, he wants to start this farm. And he wants to grow Korean stuff because there's lots of Korean people migrating to the US every year, and he sort of sees the potential market in it. He meets a local guy who helps him set up and start to plant things. And it's actually it's a gentle movie. It's a gentle, slow, meandering kind of story. Like there's no real like, oh my God, the local yuppies want to buy his land to build an oil refinery, and yet the young plucky gang of Koreans needs to win the ski race to, save the youth center or something. I don't know. Like it's nothing.
Cool
Nothing.
Minaris?
Like it's nothing like that. The Mighty Minaris. It's like Mighty Ducks, except it's farming. It's
okay. So Minari is apparently a plant native to East Asia and found in a lot of South Korean cooking.
It is a plant. So I guess the story really starts to get going is when the wife's grandmother Sunya arrives on the scene from Korea. Her husband and what's the actual wife's name? Is it Monica? I think. Monica's dad was killed in the Korean War. So they bring her over. This is probably pretty standard in sort of Southeast Asian, a lot of Southeastern cultures. Is you look after your parents as they're older, and she comes over to live with them in the United States. And one of the great joys of this film is the relationship that forms between Sunya and David. David's the youngest child in the family. He's very shy initially around his grandma because he's never met her.
Yeah.
And they ended up, and she's just the most brilliant character in this Sunya. She's funny, touching. She ends up falling in love with professional wrestling. And there's always clips of her watching like 80s professional wrestling and taking it very seriously. She teaches her son how to play cards and how to cheat. And it's just brilliant. And they have this brilliant relationship together where, because she doesn't speak English, and David, being a young boy, has the odd bout of bedwetting. And so she learns how to say penis broken about her son. but David's like, it's not a penis, it's a ding dong. And so she goes around ding dong broken. And it's, I don't want to spoil for people, but I don't use the word heartwarming very much, but I think it's very appropriate here. It's a beautiful representation of a relationship between her and her grandson that forms and you go, and you can almost see the I sound really cynical, the utility or how wonderful that kind of existence must have. Like, it's not done here in the West, right? We don't do that. We park our old people where they fucking belong, in old people warehouses where they can be studied to see if we can actually extract any useful resources from them. That's what we do. We park them away where they don't bother anybody.
Why do you have that strange smell? You all have it. Get over there.
It's an old man stink. So yeah, but the Eastern. Did you just assume my gender? In these Southeastern Asian or many cultures around the world where you look after your parents as they age, and this kind of thing, you must be something. Or maybe I know it's just a film, but must actually be one of the really great, wonderful benefits of that is you get to know in a really intimate way. I mean, intimate in the right way. A close family member like this. You actually, her grandson and her really have this amazing relationship together, which you just probably wouldn't have if you saw them once or twice a year.
Yeah. Now,
where Minari comes into it is Sunya brings Minari seeds with her from Korea. It is not something that Jacob, Steven Yeun's character, is looking to plant. And so Sunya she goes walking with David one day, and they find a little creek on the property. He's, that's a really great place to grow Minari along the river there. It'll grow perfectly there. So she says it to Jacob at one point and goes, I've got this Minari. I think you're growing it down by the river. He goes, yeah, I'll think about it. And so she just does it anyway. Without telling him. And that's another wonderful to see. It's not played up a lot, but the relationship between Jacob and Sunya it gets warmer as the film goes on. And this is what's a bit weird for me. Is the Minari, I guess it's supposed to be a metaphor for something, because it doesn't really play a huge role in the film at any point in time. Like, it's there. We revisited it a couple of times. At one time, they go back after it's all grown, and Sunya and David, they cut it all, and she's going, this is so good. It goes really well in kimchi and this, that, and the other thing. It's really good. And I'm like, okay. So at some point, the Minari, the fact that she's gone out on her own and planted all this Minari by the river, it's going to be, all the local Korean restaurants are really short on it. we just happen to have this amazing supply, and yay, you saved the farm. That spoilers, it doesn't happen. But so I don't know. I'm too stupid, being the Muppet that I am, to actually try and decipher what the filmmaker was trying to say with this Minari, and calling it that, and then what they did with it. I just really fell in love with this film and the characters in the sense that this is a film where nothing exciting happens, right? I mean, I wouldn't say there are no explosions, but there are almost no explosions. There's no car chases. There's no shooting. There are no superheroes in this film. No one's stowed away in the tractor or anything. But it's just quiet and I think methodical and just sort of goes about telling a story that you do not see very often. I don't think you see it very often. I mean, I think it's a wonderful opportunity as films had to get a little bit more publicity in a year like this, where, let's face it, in a normal year, it would be buried underneath, AAA releases of even, high profile, prestige releases, even, of stuff which hasn't been made yet because of the last year. That this is the kind of story that I think gets lost amongst all that because these stories don't get told, in the sense of this is a classic immigrant story, Stephen Ewan moves to Australia. He writes a book. No, sorry, that was your story. Another classic immigrant story. But
yes, it's one for the ages.
Yes. Who gets to get when Stephen Ewan gets that job at T2? I'm gonna say I don't think he looked like you, but he got the accent right.
He could do it.
But these sort of stories, right? America or Australia are countries built on immigrants.
Yeah.
And the stories of these people they are part of our culture now, especially I have to, obviously the United States, but in an Australian sense, you live here now, you can see it, our Greek and Italian heritage, even if you look at stuff like the Vietnamese heritage from the late 70s and Chinese heritage to a degree from going back 150 years now, it's so deeply ingrained in Melbourne that it's very deeply part of our culture now. Is there are people from all over the world here, and the stories about how they used to tell stories about what it was like for these people coming here, but they don't anymore. And I looks like that's true of the United States as well. And if I'm missing stories out there, come at me, tell me what they are. I'd love to see them. But this is a wonderful little piece of storytelling that goes to show that of a part of our story, shall we say, in immigrant countries like Australia and the US, we miss. And hello, Archimedes. Archimedes agrees with me. You can tell. Yeah. There he is. He's had enough. He's come in for his say. Go on. But I was just going to say it's also a wonderful little story about a family, and not in an overly melodramatic way. I mean, there are some melodramatic parts, and I found the character of Monica actually quite frustrating at times in the sense that I don't think she really gives Jacob a chance. I feel like Jacob's giving it a red hot go in this story, and actually all she does is bitch and moan most of the time about how she doesn't like living in Arkansas. I don't blame her. I doubt many people enjoy living in Arkansas from what I've heard about the place. But for the most part, it's a great story about a family and the kind of problems that a family has to deal with and how they overcome them together. And I loved this story. It's just we don't see enough.
This kind of sounds like it's a wholesome polar opposite of Parasite.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen Parasite yet. That's on me. But it's certainly wholesome. You could definitely take your kids to see it. I would highly encourage you to take your kids to see it. It's just a film you can sit back and go and watch and enjoy. And I know that sounds like a really simple thing to say, but just let the story wash over you, because there is a story. Let the characters wash over them and sit back and actually really get to know a bunch of people who you actually probably really want to spend. You would probably enjoy spending some time with if you spoke the same language as most of them. and just sit back and let all of that envelop you and just go along with the flow. No stress, no politics, and just enjoy a really great story about a really interesting bunch of people doing something incredibly admirable.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think we just witnessed the melting of an icy heart.
Oh, goodness me. I had a reputation to uphold.
Your reputation is
I'm a curmudgeon.
wishy heart, and you love musicals. That's it.
That is a stinking lie. That's a half truth.
That's a 3/4 truth.
I enjoy a good story, you know that, and
yeah,
and I mean, politics has its place. I think the best film of the year for me was absolutely Promising Young Woman. It absolutely should have won Best Picture. Nomadland was the safest choice, and I called it on the show, by the way, that the Academy would go for safe choice and choose Nomadland. But I think that at the same time, there's space for a film like Minari that's just telling a wonderful story about wonderful characters in a really unusual way. In a sense, it doesn't need to move at 1,000,000 miles an hour. It just sort of slowly unfolds.
Yeah. And this is still in the cinema, right?
I think you can probably see it, and you can see it here in cinemas as well. Yeah, I think it's also available maybe to rent on some of the on-demand services.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Or if not, it will be soon. If you have a chance to see it on the big screen, I would recommend it. It's a wonderful cinema experience.
Okay. Cool. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. We're not going to do our when it's too much conversation. We will save that for after Loki, so probably 2-3 weeks from now. Well, Loki's probably going to be released episodically. That might be a little while, but it's a conversation that's not going to go away. It's only going to get more prevalent, I'm sure.
We can see how many films Marvel has planned to come out this year.
Holy shit!
I think 3 films from here on in. We have Black Widow, Shang-Chi, and then I think the Eternals.
I think that's the one that rounds it off. Yeah, I think so. We did get like a little bit more of a teaser and the first true looks at the Eternals, and so far so much Marvel teaser for a film coming out and not yet finished production. So I think we did also actually get the trailer for Venom: Let There Be Carnage, which dropped just yesterday, I think it was. It's a sequel to Venom. Again, so superhero movie sequel, directed by Andy Serkis. So there's already, just in the trailer, there's a lot more kind of fun.
Humor.
And
which is, I didn't like it, but then again, I didn't like Venom very much. Yeah. But Shay will be excited, right? That's her favorite superhero film, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's what she said. It'll be good to see Woody Harrelson in there. I'm sure that he will do very good as a comic book villain that is psychotic and supposed to be kind of funny as well. It very much sounds like his meal ticket. Yeah. That's our show, folks. That's our show. We talked about Natural Born Killers. We're going to be going on to LA Story next week. We talked about Jupiter's Legacy, Thunder Force, and Stowaways, which are all Netflix movies for this year. And Travis finished off by Warming being a soft, gooey center with Minari, which has definitely captivated a lot of people. I am looking forward to finally catching that side of it. If you've got any recommendations for movies more akin to sort of like Minari and like what Travis was talking about at the end there, those like, I suppose you can call them niche stories, the birth of different cultures particularly within Western societies, because they sadly so frequently are the downtrodden elements of the society, because they ain't white people, so fuck them apparently. I love those stories. I love hearing about that stuff. I want to find out more. So if you know some really interesting stories, let us know. You can go to twitch.tv/thefriedbrain, catch us there. You can leave messages in the chat. You can go to Fried Brain Productions on Facebook, George Tarrant on Facebook, the Fried Brain on Twitter. Travis is just God. And
I'm glad someone finally acknowledged it.
Hey, I'm your first follower, my friend.
Blessed be.
Blessed be the talent.
Take this, oh holy hand grenade of Antioch, so thy may blow thy enemies into smithereens in thy mercy.
On that note, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to round it out at the 2-hour mark again. Thank you so much for watching and listening.
Good night.
Good night.